Hi, I'm Pam Day, and this is Talk the Truth Tuesday. Nevertheless, so it's been a while since I've been on here to share a word of truth. Sometimes in life you can go through something that can really, just knock you off course. And it's during those times that we can start to question whether or not we can question ourselves concerning the things that God has told us to do. And self-doubt and fear can creep in. And although I realize that this is one of the tactics of the devil, sometimes it happens. I've always had my own feelings about how parents raise their children without any boundaries and then release them. And this is my feelings, my point of view. I feel like they release them as monsters into society to wreak havoc on other people's lives and to have no regard for human life. So I got word last month that one of those monsters had murdered a childhood friend's 26-year-old daughter on Mother's Day. And another young lady on 95 in Richmond. And I'm being told that it was over a dispute in a parking lot. And so this guy sprayed their car with bullets, and he murdered those two young ladies, and he injured my friend's daughter's fiance as well, and left her two young grandchildren motherless. So and then about 5 days later, another childhood friend, her niece was murdered by her 26-year-old niece was murdered by her children's father in front of the children. So that also left behind some motherless children. And these two senseless acts of violence just, inside the span of a week, grieving mothers, grieving fathers, grieving family members, motherless children. I just started questioning, what's going on in this society, that people are okay with their children being murderers. And people are okay with their friends being murderers. And the connection of pain that I had for those grieving parents, and knowing that, that me and my husband had buried two children of our own, I just began to question myself. Does what I do matter? Is this going anywhere? Am I really making a difference? See, I'm of the belief that if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So I just reached a point where I kind of just wanted to give up. And my soul was just in anguish, just really feeling pain for these parents. And I just kept praying and praying and praying for myself. God, what do you want me to do? What should I do? But then one day God dropped this word in my spirit. Nevertheless. 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 So I began digging around and looking this word up and doing a little bit of study. And the word nevertheless means in spite of. In spite of. So in spite of what you now know, persevere. Sometimes in life, you just have to get a nevertheless in your spirit. In Luke chapter 5, when Simon Peter, the fisherman, had fished all night long and didn't catch anything, and Jesus, a carpenter, came along and told him to go back and launch in the deep for a catch. Simon responded and said, Master, we have toiled all night and have taken nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. Doesn't matter what it looks like to you. Nevertheless, at God's word, we have to do what he says do. When Simon obeyed God, he caught so many fish, his net started to break. In Psalm, the 31st chapter, 22nd verse, David was in anguish over his enemies. And he cried out to God. He said, "For I said in my haste, I am cut off before your eyes. Nevertheless, you heard the voice of my supplications when I cried out to you." I don't care what you're going through. It doesn't matter how deep the pain. Even though David, in a moment of fear, cried out from his feelings, briefly, he felt like he was cut off from before God's eyes. Nevertheless, he responded out of what he knew about God. And this was that in the times he cried out to God, God heard him. Know this, just as David had a nevertheless, so do you. So do I. God also hears the voice of our supplications when we cry out to him. When we have a nevertheless in our spirit. You see, in Matthew 26:39, Jesus also was feeling an intense struggle. He knew the future he was facing. Yet for our sakes, he had a nevertheless in his spirit. He said, "Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Because Jesus had a nevertheless for us, it can never be the less for him. So there are times in life when we have to get a nevertheless in our spirit. In spite of what we're going through, in spite of what we feel, in spite of what people think, in spite of how it looks, in spite of what people say, in spite of how low we may go. So I'm not sure who this is touching. I'm only sure that nevertheless, I will continue to do the work that God has assigned me to do. I pray that you do the same. For as Paul said, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. It's not me, but the Christ that lives in me. Nevertheless. So I hope you have really been blessed by this word. If so, please like and share this video. And be blessed, everyone. Everybody have a good night. I love everybody.